What's up, NBA fans? Dom2K on the mic, and according to the ridiculous view count on YouTube, we've all seen revenge plays. You know, those times where a player had some pent up aggression to take out on somebody after he gets blocked or whatever. Those happen pretty frequently. But how many times has there been a legitimate revenge game? An entire 48 minutes where a player comes back from something that happened to him sometime earlier in his career. Well, I found some great examples, so today we're going to be looking at 4 of the best revenge games of all time. And for your chance to sit in on one of these revenge games someday, download the SeatGeek app to help you get the best view. SeatGeek pulls tickets from all over the web and has them in one place to make purchasing one for your event really easy, and it also makes sure you'll be getting the best value for your ticket. While searching for your tickets, each one is ranked with a score from 1 to 100 that lets you know if you're getting a good deal or not for your purchase. On top of that, the app also provides you with a detailed view of what you would see from your seat before you even get there, which is extremely helpful. If you're interested in downloading this app, the links to it are going to be in the comment section and in the description. If you're still on the fence, consider using my promo code DOM2K to get $20 off your first purchase. And without further ado, let's get into the list.
Green guarding clock at 4. James steps into a jumper and rattles it in.
LeBron James has some crazy history with the Celtics, although it's been about 5 or 6 years since they were a serious threat to him, so you probably haven't thought about it lately. Anyways, this event took place in 2013 after he had pretty much done away with them, but he dominated them in the Garden once more on a random night in March to completely end a rivalry that had been going on for about 6 seasons. This night counts as revenge for a couple of reasons. First, after the Celtics had given him trouble for so long, he'd gone on to beat them 2 straight times in the playoffs, but nobody was certain if the Celtics had gone away for good quite yet. The Heat were also bringing a 22-game win streak into the Garden that night, and for them to extend it to what was the second longest win streak of all time back then, they'd have to get through Boston. Jeff Green was having a career night, pouring in 43 points, and he had the game tied as the clock was winding down in the 4th. But of course, LeBron James went right at Jeff Green and knocked down the game-winning jumper that gave him 37 points to go along with 12 assists. But although that was the most important part of the night, it wasn't the most vengeful thing to happen. Jason Terry also happened to be a member of the Celtics in 2013, and this was coming only 2 seasons after he pretty much humiliated LeBron James in the 2011 finals. He outscored him in that series, hit one of the biggest daggers right in his face, and had some words after the series was over. Well, along with getting rid of the Celtics for the next few seasons, LeBron also put Jason Terry in the coffin. You've all seen it.
Takes it away. Chalmers. Cole. James! Whoa! And a technical foul called.
That's one of the best revenge plays of all time, and it came in a game that pretty much signaled the end of LeBron taking serious threats every year from a Pearson Garnett-led Celtics team. On top of that, the Heat were able to extend their win streak to 23, and after the game, LeBron said it felt good to dunk on Terry because of the way he always ran his mouth. If this game doesn't count as revenge, I don't know what does.
Takes it out to Jordan for 3. Another wide open shot for Michael Jordan.
When MJ was in his prime, running your mouth to or about him just wasn't a smart idea. It was bad enough that he was as talented as he was, but he was also a competitive psycho that basically dreamt up challenges when he was getting bored. And you would think after years of dealing with him while being an assistant coach for the Knicks, Jeff Van Gundy would have known this. Or maybe he did know it and for some reason he just didn't care. But either way, this experiment didn't work out well for him or the Knicks. This was his first full season being the actual head coach for the Knicks, and maybe as an attempt to get in Jordan's head, he told the media that Jordan was, quote, a con man. Van Gundy said, quote, his way is to befriend them, soften them up, try to make them feel that he cares about them, then he goes out there and tries to destroy them. The first step as a player is to realize that and don't go for it. Horrible miscalculation on Van Gundy's part. MJ came out and torched New York as he scored 51 points, shot 60% from the field, 62% from 3, and played 43 minutes as the Bulls won the game by 1 point. But there's a couple of notes I need to make about this performance. First, the New York Knicks were ranked 2nd in defensive rating that year and won 50 games, so this wasn't some weak team that he was toying with on some random night. Next, look at the actual final score of the game, which was 88-87. Remember, I said Michael scored 51 of those 88 points, meaning he accounted for 58% of Chicago's scoring that night. Oh, and don't let the score fool you either. The game was actually a blowout until New York went on a 17-2 run, which brought the game within 2 points with about 6 minutes left in the 4th. While doing all that scoring, Jordan was also tasked with defending the best perimeter scorer, Allen Houston, who he caused to miss 12 of his first 13 shots and to shoot 5 of 18 overall. I also mentioned that the Knicks caught up using a run, and that was because the Bulls only scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. Well, as you might expect, Jordan scored 12 of those points and assisted on the only other basket the team scored. He also made more field goals than the rest of the Bulls combined, as he shot 18 of 30, meanwhile the team went 16 of 46. To put the icing on the cake, when Jordan scored his 51st point at the end of the game, he had some words for Van Gundy. Take a look.
Jordan with 49. Jordan now has 51. And he is screaming at Jeff Van Gundy. And he's feeling it. He was not going to pass that ball. He had every intention of shooting it.
Okay, I lied about the icing on the cake part. This is the icing. After dismantling arguably the best defensive team in the league by himself, Jordan walked off the court and said something else to Van Gundy. Two things I want to point out here. First, look at the guy next to Jordan and how his mouth drops. I'd pay to know what Michael said that caused that reaction. Also, as Van Gundy walks away, he's got this look on his face like he's just seen what the world was gonna look like 20 years later. Whatever Jordan said had him shook, and the only reason this doesn't get my #1 spot is because it took place in the regular season.
Now that shows you that particular...
Oh, James comes flying in and throws it down. He's got 27 first-half points.
Okay, so now we can bridge the gap on #4. What LeBron did to the Celtics in 2013 was just completely in the rivalry once and for all, but back up about 9 months earlier, and you have one of the best revenge games of all time. A game that, as a Celtics fan, I'm still not ready to accept. While it's true Miami beat the Celtics in 2011, that one wasn't quite as vengeful as this series. Yes, it was the first time LeBron had ever beaten Boston in a playoff series, but it came on the heels of Rondo injuring his elbow, Shaq sitting out with the Achilles, and most of the team was just dealing with injuries in general. On top of that, the Heat never even came close to losing that series, so there was really no excitement there. But in 2012, the Celtics came back hard, and after Pierce's 3 in his face from Game 5, a lot of people were convinced that Boston was just LeBron's curse and he wouldn't ever be able to shake him. So coming into Game 6, Boston had a 3-2 lead after just barely having won Game 5. The game was in the Garden, the Heat still hadn't won a championship after LeBron's claim that they were going to win 8 of them, and the world was really just ready to come down on Miami. As I've said before, his entire legacy was on the line that night. LeBron responded with one of the fiercest playoff performances anyone has ever put up, and that look that he had in his eyes before the game started, that's pretty much proof that he had that killer instinct in him even if he doesn't always show it. James scored 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists in a game that was never really close. He was dunking, pulling up from mid-range, just doing whatever he had to do to suck the life out of the building. This game has vengeance written all over it, because in a total of 4 playoff series in 5 years, this was about to be the 3rd time the Celtics had eliminated him. He lost in 2008 despite taking it to 7, he lost in 2010, which was the series that actually triggered his move to Miami specifically so he could get past the Celtics. Losing to the team that was responsible for the decision in the first place would have been devastating, especially after what happened in the 2011 finals. It was like he just took all the failure from the past 5 seasons of his career, bottled it all up, and used it as fuel for one game that nobody's ever gonna forget. That was also the official end of the Big 3 era in Boston, as Ray Allen joined him in Miami next season. That just wasn't a good time for the Celtics.
Olajuwon, fall away, got the bucket and the foul.
If you don't know anything about Hakeem Olajuwon, I'm still willing to bet that you've seen him put David Robinson to sleep with his post moves. As a matter of fact, you've definitely seen it because it was even recreated for the intro of NBA 2K12. That's how crazy it was. We're well aware that Jordan retired and the Hakeem-led Rockets popped up in its place, but I'm one of the few people who thinks the Rockets could have still gotten at least one title with the Bulls around, and mainly because they wouldn't have had anybody to even challenge Hakeem. In 1994, he won the MVP award while averaging 27 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, and shooting 53% from the field. On top of that, he won Defensive Player of the Year in that same season, meaning he's one of only 4 players to ever win both awards in their careers, and one of only 2 players to win both awards in the same year, the other being Michael Jordan. If you look at his numbers for the next season, they were pretty much identical, only this time the Rockets won 11 less games, meanwhile the Spurs improved to 62 wins behind a monster year from David Robinson. The only sketchy thing about this is that Robinson's numbers were nearly identical to Hakeem's that year, and the season before when Hakeem won it, Robinson still had comparable numbers, but the Spurs won 3 less games. This provides good support for the idea that the MVP almost always goes to the best player on the best team, and needless to say, Hakeem was pissed about it. To make matters worse, before Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals between the Rockets and the Spurs, Robinson was presented with the MVP trophy while Hakeem had to watch. His teammate told him that that was his trophy, and Hakeem just vowed that they were going to win the one that really mattered. He may look like a calm guy, but the killer came out of him that night. He caused Robinson to shoot 1 from 11 through the first 3 quarters and finished 5 for 17 on the night with 7 turnovers. Meanwhile, the Dream posted 27 points, 5 blocks, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and shot 50% from the floor, spoiling Robinson's MVP night as the Rockets stole home court advantage by 1 point. But the most impressive thing about that game will forever be Hakeem shaking Robinson out of his shoes in the post. There hasn't been anything like that since it happened, and in my opinion, it was part of the biggest statement game ever. It wasn't just because they won that night, but they also went on to win the series with Hakeem averaging 35 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, and shooting 56% from the field while playing against the MVP of the league. That's one of the most insane stat lines ever for a playoff series, and he led the 6th seed Rockets to the finals over the 1st seeded Spurs, where they'd repeat as champions. So officially, when we look back, we see that David Robinson won the MVP in 1995, but I think we can all agree Hakeem did more than enough to prove who was really the most valuable player. And that's what I got for you guys today. Those are 4 of the best revenge games of all time. Of course, when you guys go looking, there's way more revenge plays than there is actually revenge games, but if you have any games that you have in mind that I left off this list, make sure to leave them in the comment section, hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed. Make sure to go sub to my gaming channel if you want more content. I'll have the link to that in the description and in the comment section, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.